The time is now 6 p.m., and we will now begin the last of 3 virtual public information sessions in 2021 for the Port Arthur and vicinity Coastal Storm Risk Management Project. On behalf of the project team, we thank you for your time and interest in the Port Arthur project. My name is Connor Stokes, and I'll be facilitating this evening's public information session. Before we proceed with our agenda, I would like to review some housekeeping items to help the meeting run smoothly. The chat feature is open for you to provide your email if you'd like to be added to our email distribution list. And the chat feature can also be used to send us questions. As you think of questions, please enter them into the chat feature, and we'll collect these questions. And later, following the presentation, they'll be presented to our panel for their comment and response during a question and answer session. If we don't have time to get to every question tonight, we encourage you to submit questions or inquiries to the project email address. Please do not unmute your phone or your WebEx audio connection with the button at the bottom of your screen. Please also understand that this public information session is not considered a formal NEPA public meeting. Therefore, any questions or responses provided today will not become a part of the administrative record. However, we do value your participation, and we look forward to taking and responding to questions after the presentation. I will now introduce the project team. From the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, we are joined by Charles Wheeler, Project Manager for the Port Arthur Project, Bobby Van Cleve, Lead Engineer, Kenny Pablo, Real Estate Specialist, Jeff Pinsky, Chief of Environmental Compliance, and Kelly Burks-Copes, Communications Project Manager. And from the Jefferson County Drainage District Number 7, or DD7, the project sponsor, we are joined by General Manager Phil Kelly and District Engineer Alan Sims. Before tonight's presentation, we'd like to begin with opening remarks from the Corps and DD7. Kelly?
Thank you, Connor. And thanks to all of you for joining us this evening for our third info session this week. We trust that most of you are familiar with the Sabine to Galveston program and the Port Arthur project specifically, and that this isn't the first time that you've heard information about these two, but if it is, we're excited to bring you an update, and we plan to continue having these types of info sessions throughout the life of the project for the next several years on a regular basis. This is an important project for the region, and your input is vital to the process, so we look forward to hearing from you. And with that, I'll hand it over to our non-fed sponsor, Phil Kelly, at the Jefferson County Drainage District Number 7. Phil?
Good evening. My name is Phil Kelly, and I work as the General Manager here for Jefferson County Drainage District 7. Here with me this evening is Alan Sims. He's our Director of Engineering for Drainage District 7. We here at Jefferson County Drainage District 7 welcome you to this public information meeting. We would also like to thank the United States Corps of Engineers for hosting these meetings to better inform our citizens. Just a little history before we get started. The Drainage District 7 currently serves as the local non-federal sponsor of the Port Arthur and vicinity Hurricane Flood Protection Levee Project, which came about years ago as a result of Hurricane Carla in 1961, which inundated a large portion of our area from the 7-foot storm surge. Following Carla, Congressman Jack Brooks pushed Congress to authorize and appropriate funds to the Corps of Engineers to design and construct the Hurricane Flood Protection Levee System here in South Jefferson County. Construction of the levee system began in the late 60s through the 70s and was completed around 1980. Upon completion, the levee system and associated pump stations were turned over to Drainage District Number 7 for maintenance and operation. This levee system protects the entire communities of Port Arthur and Groves, as well as portions of Port Neches and Needland, from storm surges and high waters associated with coastal storms. Fast forward to the present, in November of 2019, DD7 entered into a project partnership agreement with the Corps of Engineers to update and improve our levee system. We at DD7 certainly value our partnership with the Corps and look forward to working with the Corps of Engineers and you, our citizens, to provide added protection to our region by the implementation of the Sabine Pass to Galveston Bay Coastal Storm Risk Management Project. DD7 believes this meeting will be very informative and answer many of your questions. With that said, the Corps will now continue with their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now proceed with the Port Arthur project presentation from Project Manager Charles Wheeler. Charles?
Thank you, Connor. Good evening, everyone. I'm Charles Wheeler, the project manager for the Sabine Pass to Galveston Bay Port Arthur project. I'd just like to welcome everyone and thank you all for joining us this evening. The team's excited to be here today to present what we've been working on the past 2 years for the city of Port Arthur. We'll move through the presentation. You can see this color-coded graphic represents various projects that make up the Corps' mission. Starting in the southeast corner, you can see the beginning of the Sabine Pass to Galveston Bay Project program, which includes orange in orange, Port Arthur in blue. And this orange is a completely new system. I want to make sure I mention that. And for Port Arthur, we'll be doing improvements to the existing system. Now, as we move southwest, we have Freeport in red, which is similar to Port Arthur, and we'll be doing improvements to the existing system as well. If you travel along the coast eastward from Freeport, you can see in the light blue the Coastal Texas Project, which was recently signed and endorsed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Chief of Engineers. And these projects together will provide multiple lines of defense for the Texas Gulf Coast. Now, this is a regional approach to storm surge risk reduction and our effort to mitigate erosion of our bay and Gulf shorelines. When tropical storms or hurricanes impact the Texas coast, the immediate fallout and the continued aftermath affects not only the people who live in these coastal counties, but also the entire nation. It is critical that we take action now to avoid the destruction that future storms may bring. That's why Congress has given us this important landmark mission to be proactive rather than reactive, as we have taken many lessons learned from Katrina. Through the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018, Congress authorized and fully funded all 3 of these projects: Freeport in green, Port Arthur, there in the red, and orange, to move forward and begin pre-construction engineering and design, or what we call PED. Following PED, we moved into construction. Port Arthur was funded for $863 million, and we signed the project partnership agreement in November of 2019 with Jefferson County Drainage District number 7. The objectives of the overall S2G program include reducing risks to human life from storm surge impacts, reducing economic damages to businesses, residents, and infrastructure, and enhancing energy security by reducing storm surge risks to petrochemical facilities. So Port Arthur has an existing system, and the system is made up of 28 miles of earthen levees and approximately 6 miles of flood walls and 13 pump stations along the alignment. The Port Arthur area plays a major role in the nation's economic vitality, and this community remains vulnerable to possible storm surge. Hurricanes Rita and Ike caused widespread damage and devastation across southeast Texas. The improvements that will make up the Port Arthur project were planned to occur mostly within the footprint of the existing hurricane flood protection project, but are subject to change during the PED phase as we gather more information about the existing system. The Port Arthur project is intended to make the needed improvements to the system now so that those systems can be easier to improve in the future. We call that adaptability. The project authorization provides for construction of these raises and improvements, and once the work is done, the system will look very similar to how it does today, but will be a better safeguard for the structures, and communities behind them during coastal storm surge events. Here are a few of the main ways the project will be improved. We'll be replacing 6 miles of concrete or steel eye walls. And as you can see on the left, the structure is shaped like an eye. That's why we call it an eye wall. We are replacing these eye wall structures with T-walls, as you can see on the right, shaped like an upside down T, with multiple structures below. These updated design T-walls are significantly improved to withstand large impact and increased pressure caused by higher water levels. Another project feature includes raising of approximately 6 miles of the existing 28 miles of earthen levee and the creation of a separate 1,800-foot new earthen levee in the Port Neches area. The graphic on the right details a 1 to 2 foot raise, but in some cases we will raise the levee up to 4 feet. And when raising the levee, the amount of real estate increases as the footprint widens. Next up, road closure gates. These gates will be made to be open for the majority of the time and will be closed prior to a storm surge event to prevent flooding. Railroad closure gates, similar to road closure structures, will be closed prior to an event to prevent flooding caused by storm surge. And you can see on the graphic how the storm surge would be contained. Right now, we have one project in construction that started in 2020, while the other sections are in the pre-construction, engineering, and design, or PED phase, as I mentioned before. Construction of the remaining sections of the Port Arthur system are scheduled to start between 2022 and 2023 and are anticipated to be complete by the end of 26. There we go. Bobby will go into further detail on the following slides, but I'd like to mention that during the PED phase, detailed engineering, technical studies, designs, environmental compliance, and the identification of real estate needed for construction will be completed. The Port Arthur team will consider many factors such as engineering best practices, environmental impacts, and potential benefits and impacts to residents and businesses throughout the project. We'll move on to talk about project funding. The project was fully funded by Congress in 2018 for $863 million, and the project is cost shared at 65% federal and 35% non-federal, sharing the cost with Jefferson County Drainage District number 7. And at this time, I'd like to turn over the presentation to Mr. Bobby Van Cleve, our lead engineer, to discuss the contracts in more detail.
Thanks, Charles. All right, hello and good evening. My name is Bobby Van Cleve, and I am the lead engineer for the Port Arthur project. And I was just going to let the group know that the Corps of Engineers and Galveston District has assembled a multidisciplined team from all over the Corps of Engineers, and it's been established in order to solve technical issues and develop high-quality engineering designs for our new levee system. The levee improvements, they've been broken up into several separate contracts, as you'll see, and this was based on feedback that we've received early on during the design feasibility studies and from industry. These projects are at various stages right now of design and construction. And first, I want to note some issues, some complications, some complex technical and engineering problems that need to be resolved as we go forward in these contracts and get further along in design and development and into construction. The first of which I want to mention is the scheduling and phasing of separate contracts, how they work together, how they connect to each other from contract to contract, and the type of difficulty it is for our team to develop that cohesive connection between contracting to contract and improve the levee system and its integrity. Also, another issue relates to utilities, relocation of pipelines, relocation and awareness of municipal infrastructure, and the telecommunication lines and other utilities that we just have to work through and understand where these systems are located, how they are going to be connected to or be a part of the system, or be in some manner recognized as a part of the system in the future. And so we have to work very closely with those entities that own those features and develop designs that incorporate that into our final alignment. Another item that's very critical is the limited space and environment that we're working in, and the existing infrastructures and buildings and other features that are surrounding the system around Port Arthur, and how important it is to work closely with those owners and the property locations along the alignment, and make sure we invest in proper engineering and development as we get into construction. Railroad and road closures. Charles already mentioned these and the important role that they play in a protective level of protection from for the levee system, and how they are going to be designed and developed as we go forward. It's very complex situation dealing with structural elements tied into earthen embankments, and we're getting further information as we go into design. Other information needed is awareness of where soft and unstable foundation soils are around this coastal environment. There's already known conditions that occur in and around the levee system, and we have to identify those areas and perform the adequate amount of soil testing in order to evaluate those type of features that we're going to be founding our levee system on, and how that can address potential future settlement. And then lastly, I want to mention the environmental conditions that are known to exist within the project area, and how closely we're working in those industrial areas that have been affected and have been in operation basically since the 1900s, and just recognize that the Corps of Engineers will attempt to avoid and minimize any impacts related to connection to and a part of any environmental concerns as we go forward. So I just wanted to start with describing each of the contracts, where they're located within the system around Port Arthur, and what kind of work we're going to be performing in those locations. And start with contract 1, and it's essentially along State Highway 87, also known as Gulfway Drive, and it's near the turning basin of Port Arthur on the south side of the old Chevron tank farm. This project is currently under construction, and what's going on right now is some foundation improvement, and it's going to be a levee raise in that area. And so just earth embankment is being constructed. This contract was awarded in March of 2020, and plans are for it to be complete in December of this year. Contract 2 is connected to 1 to the north and west, and it's also along Highway 87 near the turning basin south of the Valero refinery. It's in the very early stages of design, and it will involve flood wall and levee raise. And it's also going to be replacing flood wall failure that occurred in 2017 along that alignment. So very important that we get some work performed in that area as we improve the system. Contract 3 is connected to 2 and is totally or primarily within the Valero refinery near the turning basin south of the refinery. It's in the final design phases right now, and it involves primarily flood wall construction And the award for this contract is planned for April of next year, 2022. And the completion of that work is currently scheduled for December 2025. Contract 3A has various locations around the system, as you can see by the blue segments in the map. And it's primarily, or there's a big portion of it along the Sabine Pass waterway near the boardwalk in Lamar College. It's essentially runs from Rose Hill to Houston Avenue, and it's currently in design. Plans are for levee raise and flood wall construction, as well as some closure sections. It's planned for award in June of 2022, with a completion of work scheduled for November 2024. Contract 3B is near the Port of Port Arthur and the Kansas City Southern Rail Yard. It's in final phases of design right now, with levee raise and flood walls and some closures. And the award is scheduled for March of 2022, with a completion date of January 2024. Contract 4 is connected to 3 along the Sabine Pass waterway, and it actually runs north from Rose Hill to the Veterans Memorial Park. And it's in the early stages of design. It's primarily flood wall in this area. The award is planned for April of 2023, with a completion of construction scheduled for October 2026. And then the last contract we're working through right now, it has various locations around Port Arthur, and it extends to the ends of the system, north near the Port Neches Atlantic Road, and to the west near the airport, Jack Brooks Regional. And it's just now starting its initial design and concept phase, and it consists of levee raises and flood walls and some closures. The award date and the completion date have not been determined at this point yet, so more to come on that. With that, I'll turn it over to Kenny Pablo to discuss the real estate issues and complexity dealing with real estate as we go forward.
Thank you, Bobby. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kenny Pablo. I'm the realty specialist for the Galveston District Real Estate Division. Tonight, I will be briefly describing the Real Estate Division's responsibilities, the design phase of this project. Now, in order to determine the alignment for this project, our contractors and engineers require the most accurate engineering data that is gathered by conducting surveys and investigations. That's where the Corps of Engineer Real Estate team comes into the picture. Our job is to obtain right of entries from property owners to allow our contractors to access property to collect the data required to design the project features. The ROE, or right of entries, formally gives the government and its contractors permission to access properties to conduct the surveys and investigations listed on this slide. The right of entry packages that our team creates include the right of entry document and a signature page, description of the type of surveys and investigations that would take place on the property, and a map identifying the property and contact information form. Now, the contact information form is very important. It includes a section where the property owners can identify any site-specific conditions that they may have for the property. Some examples of site-specific conditions that we quite often see from the residential property owners are owners requesting calls in advance prior to accessing the property, times of the day when work can start on the property. So, for example, our contractors cannot access the property between the hours of, or they can only access between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., for example. We've also seen pet notifications or wildlife warnings that may be on the property. Some common site-specific conditions that we've seen on commercial and industrial property owners are advance notifications to schedule work and coordinate access to the property, safety and security requirements, requests for the property to be kept as close to original condition as possible. And we take these conditions very seriously to avoid or reduce impact to a residential owner's property or in a business's daily operations. I hope this gave more insight as to why these right of entries are so essential to our engineering team. Now, upon design completion and identification of all real estate needs for the project, DD7 will be issued a notice from the Corps to move forward with land acquisition. DD7 is responsible for acquiring all lands needed for the project. All lands acquired will follow the Uniform Relocation Act and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act of 1970. At this point, no homes or commercial relocation assistance is anticipated for this project. Now, while some lands outside of DD7's existing right-of-way will be needed for the project, we plan for the work to be within the right-of-way as much as possible. When acquiring lands for the project, an appraisal report will be done to determine the fair market value of the property. During this process, the property owners will have the opportunity to accompany the appraiser on this inspection. The property owner will be offered fair market value during the negotiations of the property acquisition. That concludes the real estate portion of this meeting, and I will now pass it to Kelly.
Thank you, Kenny. So one of the things we wanted to point out before we went into the Q&A session tonight is that we have an active website for the Sabine to Galveston program, and on that page are individual launches to each of the individual projects that Charles mentioned. Specifically for this project, it's the Port Arthur button that you would hit to get a look at information on Port Arthur. Every page has some background information on it. You will see that there are notifications of upcoming info sessions. This is the last one for this set for Port Arthur, but again, as I mentioned earlier, we will be having more in the future, so look to that location for notifications of upcoming info sessions. We also have an industry news box that's giving contractors, for example, information about upcoming requests for bids. And in the left-hand corner of that page is something you'll see is an interactive story map launch. All of the maps that you've seen tonight where we've been interacting and clicking and zooming in and zooming out of these maps, those have been placed on something called a story map for each of the projects and for the program as a whole. And if you launch into the story map, you can actually zoom straight in and have a look at what the threats are, what the recommended plan that's being constructed is, and the schedule and costs for those features. The maps are really interesting. They are immersive. You can go in and type in your home address and zoom straight to your house, or your business address, zoom straight to your business, and then pan around in those maps and have a look at where the features are being positioned in your community and what they would look like once they are constructed. So I invite you to go to the website, have a look at that for background and the story maps to gain a better perspective on your own time. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us on through the email. Connor, I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Kelly. As a reminder, we encourage you to continue entering questions into the chat feature as we move into the Q&A session. We will now begin the Q&A session in just a few moments. Please bear with us as we collect the questions that are coming in. All right. Our first question for Charles, will there be any standard design for the crossing? Will there be any standard design for the crossing of the new hurricane flood protection levee for future public, franchised, or private utilities that need to cross the levee system? Or will each one require a separate, more complex Section 408 review on a case-by-case basis?
Thanks. I'm going to let Bobby take this one.
Yeah, I'll just say, Charles, that it's a good question. Obviously, as we're continuing to develop our alignments in the levee, our concern is to accommodate the existing utilities that are there, and to plan for how they're going to be incorporated into the current design and final construction of our levee system. And so with that in mind, we're trying to evaluate each current utility that is along that alignment or within our right-of-way, and evaluate how it affects the integrity of the levee system, and then, if possible, incorporating that within the system. As for any future utilities, the last part is correct. It would have to go through our normal review processes related to Section 408 for each individual levee system, knowing that there is no standard design in each and every levee. Each and every utility and its location could be considered, critical along any part of the alignment. So we need to evaluate those individually.
And I'd like to add, we are coordinating with DD7 on some of our system where future utilities are planned to incorporate cutouts in our system that can allow it. Thank you, Connor.
Thank you, Charles and Bobby. Our next question was for Kenny. Will the property owners be provided with a detailed survey of the property to be acquired?
Thank you. Great question. So when the design is finalized and lands are identified for acquisition, the non-federal sponsor DD7 will go ahead and order a survey title and have a detailed survey of the actual property and what areas of the property would have to be acquired, whether if it's a fee taking or if it's an easement that needs to be acquired. But yes, to answer the question, a detailed survey will be required under the Uniform Act of 1970.
Thank you, Kenny. Our next question, I'm going to go to Jeff for this one. What are you doing to mitigate environmental impacts from the project?
So an environmental review was conducted consistent with the federal laws and regulations as part of the feasibility study for the Sabine Pass to Galveston Bay study. That environmental assessment looked at the potential adverse effects to the environment from all three of the different alignments that we were looking at: Freeport, Port Arthur, and Orange. For this particular region or segment, the Port Arthur section of this project, there was no environmental mitigation that was identified to be necessary to offset adverse environmental impacts. Now that said, we do have to make sure that we avoid and minimize impacts to the environment by making sure that we are maintaining and implementing our best management practices consistent with the requirements, with our 401 water quality certificate and other aspects that we coordinated with in feasibility.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next question is for Charles. How are we engaging local construction firms in this project?
So we're engaging local construction firms through industry days. In the past, we've held an industry day for all three projects at our district office. And in the future, we plan to hold industry days in Port Arthur for our small business contractors. Thank you, Connor.
Connor, I'd like to add that they can watch the website for that, and we will be posting that in the industry news boxes when they come up.
Thank you, Kelly. Our next question is for our non-federal sponsor, DD7. How much will our taxes go up with this project?
Well, at this time, taxes are not anticipated to go up. But if I could go back a few years, just prior to Harvey in 2017, we discovered a breach or a failure in our levee system over near the turning basin close to Valero's dock facility that became Drainage District 7's responsibility to repair. And at that time, due to the cost of that repair, there was concern about our reserve fund balance being depleted. Right after that, we had Tropical Storm Harvey, that affected us. And our board of commissioners realized at that time that, you know, a large failure or breach in the levee system or a big storm could certainly deplete our reserves very quickly. So they unanimously agreed that we should go up on our tax rate. So over a 3-year period, 3 fiscal years, DD7 did go up on their tax rate. But with this project coming, we felt like we needed to build that reserve, not only for future storms or failures, but also to be able to pay our 30% or 35% cost share for this project. One good thing that has happened is 2 years ago during the 86th legislative session, state legislative session, we worked with the governor's office along with several members of the legislature, our local senators and representatives, and were able to secure $200 million that was appropriated to the general land office to help offset the local sponsors' cost share of 35% cost share. That $200 million is being split up between the Orange County project, the Port Arthur project, and the Freeport project. So currently, the GLO has $106 million for Drainage District 7 to offset our 35% cost share, which is a really good thing. And we have continued to work with the state, with the governor's office and our members of the legislature to secure more money during the past just completed legislative session. So with that being said, being able to build our fund balance back to a healthy position will enable us to pay our 35% cost share if and when the state discontinues subsidizing the project. So like I said, at this time, we don't anticipate a tax increase going forward.
Thank you very much. Our next question is for Jeff. Can we, the public, provide comments during this phase of the project?
So it's a very good question. So there are a couple nuanced answers to it, but I'll try to keep it, easy to understand. So if you are, say, a resident or someone who owns property, and our real estate folks are going to contact you about accessing your property either for a survey or work, then the forms that my colleague Kenny discussed with you are the ones that will allow you to leave commentary and provide you with the contact information in case something happens on your property that you need to address. So then as far as public comments on the project that would be entered into the administrative record, I would encourage anyone that was interested in seeing that to go back and take a look at the environmental impact statement, which was published and is available on our website. It was finalized back in 2017, and it includes an entire chapter on public commentary and public engagement. And it's possible that any concerns or comments that you might have were probably raised during that time frame and then addressed there. It's one of the requirements that we have to do to conform with the National Environmental Policy Act is to record all of those public comments and then to address them or explain our consideration of those comments. So then with that there, we want to provide as much information to the public now as we can. And I know that moving forward on any construction project, if there are concerns with traffic or ability to get in and out of areas or with noise associated with construction, we're going to continue having these public information sessions so that we can, give you guys information that's going forward and give you the opportunity to ask questions, leave comments in the chat box. And we're going to have this website up that's going to be updated. Kelly does a fantastic job with that. We're going to probably have some frequently asked questions up there so that you can see those responses. So again, it was nuanced and long, but
Well, and you can hit our email box and ask us questions, and we will respond to those too.
Thank you. Our next question is for Charles. What are the anticipated impacts to the city's boardwalk and how are those being addressed?
So in order to construct the levee work that needs to be done there, we're going to have to remove the boardwalk. Our plan is to replace it in kind, but we need to work through the legalities of that. And we want to avoid and mitigate as best as we can any damages, anything to the recreation facilities. Thank you, Connor.
Thank you, Charles. I'm going to go right back to you with the next question. How will the project impact shipping or boat traffic?
Right now, we expect minimal impact. We did meet with the U.S. Coast Guard and the Sabine Nature's Navigation District and the Pilots Association to discuss the project and get their understanding on what we plan to do. And so with that, there'll be many minimal safety precautions that would need to affect the shipping channel. They may just have to travel slow through the area as we're doing construction. But there's more to come as we get further down into construction. Thanks, Connor.
Thank you, Charles. We do have one more question that's been submitted. So I do want to encourage everyone to, if you have anything on your mind, please go ahead and submit a question. We'd certainly love to get that answered here this evening. But our next question, again, is for DD7. Do the oil companies pay anything for this system as it mainly protects them from devastating storm surge?
Well, actually, within the boundaries of Drainage District 7, we're very fortunate to have a lot of industry here. In fact, industry is responsible for at least a third or a little more than a third of our tax revenue. So with that said, they do pay a lot of taxes and in effect are help paying for this project.
Thank you very much. Not seeing any additional questions come through. So at this time, thank you everyone for your attendance and questions this evening. We have just a few minutes remaining. If you have any additional questions, you may send them to the project email address. And Kelly, I'll turn it over to you now for closing remarks.
So on behalf of DD7 and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, we want to thank you for taking time out of your evenings to join us here and to engage. Remember, we're going to be back here again with multiple info sessions throughout the project timeline. So keep a wary eye on that website and you'll see announcements coming soon. We really appreciate the feedback we got tonight, and we want to thank you again for joining us.
Thank you again for your participation tonight and the interest you have shown in the Port Arthur project. This meeting is now adjourned and we'll be closing the WebEx.